chapter 4 of the book of Genesis. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching with us and continuing this great saga. There are some really cool apocryphal writings, like we talked about in chapter 3, that talk about Adam and Eve's life. The book of Adam and Eve is one of them. What was the other one? The Cave of Treasures is another one that's really cool. In fact, it's probably part of the origination of the story of the Cave of Wonders that was used in Aladdin's story. But in there, they talk about the Cave of Treasures is basically about when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. They lived in this cave. The Savior brought them to a cave where they could then live and have some roof over their head, some protection, a place to store their things, shelter from the elements, things like that. And they lived in this cave. And they were both given, Adam and Eve were both given an opportunity to take one thing with them from the garden to help them in their life. I don't know what Adam took, but according to ancient records, Eve took the beehive, Deshret, with her from there to help with promoting life and growth and things. Kind of a cool idea. We don't know how much those stories are 100% true, but they are fascinating to understand and just give you perspective on what it was like for Adam and Eve. So those are some fun ones on top of Genesis and Moses and Abraham you could look into. Now, chapter 4 is another important part. This is when Cain and Abel come around. That story starts to blossom and come around. And we learn more about this. This is, again, another major pivotal event. It's hard to say. Some people say that Cain and Abel were not the oldest, the firstborn children of Adam and Eve. Some say they were the born of Adam and Eve. They didn't have any other kids until afterwards when they had Seth and others. So there's a few conflicting ideas around there. And really, the number of children that Adam and Eve actually have isn't super relevant. It's just an interesting point. So we don't have a definitive answer for sure. But we do know for sure Cain and Abel were alive and they had to marry somebody. I think it's in the book of Adam and Eve, it talks about how Cain and Abel were twins. That Cain was the first twin born, and then Abel was born, and they had Abel's twin sister was a nice girl, but not the most beautiful girl, whereas Cain's sister was like absolutely gorgeous. And of course they married each other's sisters, is what some of those espouse. But there are some other stories where there's potentially other siblings were born, but that we just focus on these two because of the pivotal moment in history that they create. So which story is true, we don't know, and that's okay. So we're getting into Cain and Abel and their experiences here with this. So we get in here. Adam knew his Eve, bare Cain, and she bare his brother Abel. So Cain's the older of the two, Abel's the younger brother. Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So Abel dealt with animals, helping with animals, and Cain dealt more with agriculture, tilling the ground, those kinds of things. So Bible Dictionary, Cain is in the Bible Dictionary. Go look it up for some more background and more information on him. You can even look up agriculture in the Bible Dictionary. I know you probably didn't even realize that was there, but it is there. And then, of course, sacrifice is in Bible Dictionary. A lot of good stuff in there. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought out of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. So Adam and Eve had built an altar, and they were to give sacrifices in basically keeping the laws that God had given them to offer sacrifices, to remind them of the importance of sacrificing, to keep the commandments and do what's right. But also, as we know from the law of Moses, it was there to prepare the people to remember the sacrifice that is going to happen with the Savior. And very important things there. So in Abel, he also brought forth the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. The Lord had respect unto Abel and unto his offering. But Cain and his offering he had not respect, and Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. So there's not a ton of information in here about Cain and Abel. If you look in Abraham or Moses and Abraham, you get a little bit more information in there. But it sounds like Cain wasn't necessarily excited. The Apocryphal writings get a little bit more into this as well, that Cain wasn't so excited about keeping the commandments. He was kind of that, why am I keeping these commandments? Why am I doing this? This isn't good. Do I really need to give God the best, or do I just need to give him something? And Abel was more of, hey, I want to keep the commandments. I want to do what God says. I'm going to give him the best of my flocks and the fat thereof. I'm not just going to give him the best, but make sure he's getting the best of all my stuff. And I'm sacrificing to give him the best. Whereas Cain's kind of like, yeah, I'll give him something, but I'm going to kind of keep some for myself too. So there's a bit of an attitude difference between those two. And I think that helps set up this dynamic between them. Verse 6, the Lord said unto Cain, why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, thou shalt not be accepted. Shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. So verse 7 is kind of a foreshadowing of what is to come, that maybe God was warning Cain a little bit, like, hey, you need to kind of change your attitude a little bit here about what you're doing, with why you're sacrificing and what you're doing, because if not, Satan's going to have a window of opportunity to tempt you. Again, if you remember from chapter 3, we talked about that building that spiritual reserve of energy to prevent Satan from having to be able to get to you very much. So this is interesting. It's fascinating that he says that Cain will rule over Satan in this situation. So here's a thought that comes up with this. Cain rule over Satan? Yes, that is the arrangement. The devil serves his client, gratifies his slightest whim, pampers his appetites, and is at his beck and call throughout his earthly life, putting unlimited power and influence at his disposal through his command of the treasures of the earth, gold and silver. But in exchange, the victim must keep his part of the agreement, following Satan's instructions on earth and remaining in his power hereafter. That is the classic bargain, the pact with the devil, by which Faust, Don Juan, Macbeth, or Jabez Stone achieved the pinnacle of earthly success and the depths of eternal damnation. So this is kind of a, realizing that through lots of movies and stories, we've heard of people who've made the deal with the devil. Hey, I will help give you some instant gratification now, but your soul belongs to me later. This is even in the comic books. We hear about this with the whole concept of, I just forgot the superhero guy's name, the Flaming Skull and things. The Nicolas Cage did a movie about him that wasn't really good, but then in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. they did a better version of it. But anyways, this idea that, you make a deal with the devil, he helps you out, and then you got to go back and live in torment with him later. He gives you whatever you want now, but you got to pay the price. Monkey paw kind of a thing, if you remember that old story. So that's kind of what God is warning him of, basically, in here. And verse 8, Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field, Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. Now we don't have a lot of details on this. Some of the Apocryphal writings talk about how Cain said, hey, Abel, I need you to help me with something, go off in the woods. And then he ran up around a corner. Abel comes running, Cain, where are you? And Abel jumps out and kills him. There's the one is, I think he strangles Abel. Another one, he uses a rock and he pummels him until he dies. Nevertheless, Cain slew Abel, kind of the first murder in the world, the first major sin after Adam and Eve had left the garden. And that's what happens, basically. And then verse 9, of course, the Lord says unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not, am I my brother's keeper? Famous words we hear all the time quoted in helping us understand our relationship to others. And the answer is yes, we are there to help each other out. But this story kind of unfolds where now they're going, where's Abel? What's going on? Cain, have you seen your brother Abel, your little brother? And Cain's like, nope, I have no idea what's going on. That's his alibi. And then if they find out what's going on, verse 10, the Lord basically says, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. So the Lord knows through the spiritual realm, wait a minute, Abel's moved to the next phase of the plan, going into the spirit world, that holding place of spirits before the resurrection and judgment and stuff. Why is he there? What do you know? And That's when it comes here, basically, and it finds out Cain killed him. Verse 11, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. And then, of course, when thou tillest the ground, this is part of the curse, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. That is important. Now, Cain is a cultivator of the ground, but one of the curses that he was given was that the ground, no matter how he tries, he will never be able to grow food. So if you can't grow food, how do you eat? You have to kill for it. If he can't eat plants, all he's got left is meat. So he has to keep killing to keep himself alive. Pretty interesting thought in there. Now, a fugitive and a vagabond thou shalt be in the earth. So this is an important thing to look at, because a fugitive and a vagabond is not somebody who builds a house, settles down, lives a life. These are people who travel, like a gypsy. They travel. They're nomadic. They just keep moving around. So Cain has to keep doing this, in fact, to help out. So in fact, read in Moses and Abraham, we learn about the valley of Nod, which means nomad. So he gets kicked down into the valley, which means Adam and Eve in this cave were in a mountainous area, and then he was kicked down into the valley where his family went to be nomads, to wander, basically. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. So he's saying, hey, this is unfair. This is too much to bear for me. Everybody is going to know who I am and is going to want to slay me. Because remember, there was a curse put on him, a mark. Not so much a mark of dark skin necessarily. There's some misunderstandings in how those verses look. And we'll go into that with Pearl at Price. But that there's an opportunity to help people to realize, don't kill him. This is not the person you need to slay. And that's when in verse 15, the Lord said, therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. So the mark was there to help people to understand who he was and what was going on with that. In fact, there's a whole note we have on the mark of Cain, so that'll be a different video, so I don't want to make this one too long. And then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod. That means nomadism or wandering on the east of Eden. So realize we're still getting this, Adam and Eve, the garden was planted eastward in Eden. Okay, if you remember from Moses, book of Moses, we talked about this. Garden was planted eastward from Eden, so they go from this point in heaven eastward to Eden, and then Adam and Eve were kicked out eastward of the garden, and now Cain is being kicked eastward out of Adam and Eve's area as well. So going farther from God is what it comes down to. Okay, this is that metaphor. It's not a literal direction, but metaphorical understanding of this. That's Old Testament symbolism. They spoke in a lot of symbolism. That's why we get some of these crazy stories, is they were more symbolic than literal. Which is where a lot of J.R.R. Tolkien got his ideas for his books. And then Cain knew his wife. She conceived and bare Enoch, and he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. So Enoch Jr., basically. Now, this is an important point to bring up. Do not confuse Enoch of Cain's lineage to the city and the name of Enoch in Seth's lineage. So there's a lot of similarities of names that happen between the line of Seth and the line of Cain. And it's fascinating in a way that it shows that Satan, who Cain is following, will always put up a copycat version of the truth. So there's the truth, the right path, then there's the other path that looks similar, but it's not the same. So kind of a cool idea there. Maybe that's what they were trying to represent with these names. And they did build a city, basically, one of the first cities, built and able to do things down there. Enoch was born before Abel was killed, in fact, and Abel gave Enoch the Melchizedek priesthood. So this is section 84 of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 16. So the true Enoch was still around before this happened. So we can't think of Cain and Able as like young kids or teenagers. They were probably a couple hundred years old when this whole thing went down. So just a little bit of a perspective to take there as well. Understand here, this city of Enoch that Cain's descendants built is believed to be the first city built. Everybody else was kind of dwelling in a communal area, but this was like a city established. Believed to be the first city ever built. The people lived in a communal area where the mountains near the Cave of Treasures before this. The city was in the valley and not in the mountain, where it was a more simple life. So the communal areas where Adam and Eve and Seth and them lived up in the mountains near the Cave of Treasures. And then Cain went down into the valley and wandered around, had to move around to follow where the animals were migrating, things to kill animals. But his descendants made a city, a major city with commerce and houses and dwellings and stuff and streets down there. And verse 18, and Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehujael, and Mehujael begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech. So this name in here, Irad, this name means the shy or withdrawn one who can't circulate in society. Maybe he had some mental issues and was very shy. Could be interesting. Names were often given because of representations of the people or blessings to the people. Mehujael, Meh means smitten by God, and Ujael means paralyzed. This person was someone who was smitten with a chronic disease from birth, like a paralysis. He could have had polio or some kind of an early infection or a birth defect of paralysis. So there's physical disabilities that are happening among these people. Methusael, this means one who has been prayed for. So Methusael is someone who's been prayed over. So somebody is trying to pray to God to help him. So again, there could be some problems, health problems that these people are facing because they are, of course, not dealing with God. They're dealing with the world and all the other problems like what we deal with in our life. And then verse 19, and Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zilha. In the Bible dictionary, there's Lamech. Go look him up. He's a pretty interesting guy. Lamech means loss or destruction. So really interesting how they got his name in here. Now, Ada, his first wife, means the beautiful and adorned one. She had a natural beauty and could doll herself up too. Zilha means a likeness or reflection or shadow. So she could have been a reflection or shadow. So Ada was his first wife. Zilha was similar to Ada, maybe is how that came to be. Verse 20, and Ada bare Jabal, and he was the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. So Jabal, it should read Jubal and means to sing or rejoice. This is Hunibli. It's where we get the word jubilee from in Hebrew. He knew how to play musical instruments that were portable since they were wanderers. So they not only had cattle, they learned some agriculture and how to cultivate animals and keep them around rather than have to hunt for them all the time. And then they dwelt in tents. They moved around a lot. They were nomadic. And Jubal, or Jabal, actually means Jubal, which actually means Jubilee, which means singing and dancing and music. So happiness. So he was probably the first to start creating instruments to sing with. So a lot of cool stuff when you get into how, some of these words and where they came from. So verse 21, and his brother's name was Jubal. So Jabal was the cattle. Jubal, I guess, was the name of, he was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ, and which Bible dictionary, harp and organ are in there as well. So that works out great. Verse 22, and Zilha, she also bare Tubal Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And so Tubal Cain was a metal worker. He dealt with metal, sharpening metal, molding metal. He was a blacksmith, probably the first blacksmith. And the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. Now, this means the smith or worker of metal, Tubal Cain means smith or worker of metal. He was a great blacksmith. Naamah means delightful. So she's a pretty happy person, probably a pretty delightful person. So now we get into verse 23. And Lamech said unto his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, hearken unto my speech. For I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. We are not told in Genesis chapter 4 that story. Okay, he's talking to his wife about what happened already. So the story's already happened. In the Apocryphal writings, we get more of this story. So we're going to get into that here just to give you some more background on this. He says, if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold, basically. So this is the Lamech problem. Hugh Nibley talks about this. He says, according to ancient documents, Cain was mad at Lamech since he set himself up as a ruler. So Lamech tried to be a ruler over the people, even though Cain was ruling the people. When Cain went to the field to kill him, Lamech was hiding with a boy. Now Lamech was blind, so the boy was guiding him. He had the boy direct his arrow and hit Cain. The boy was held responsible, so Lamech killed the boy. Thus he became the leader like Cain. Lamech's wives rebelled and told Cain where to find him. So that's the story we get, that Cain and Lamech had an argument. Cain decided, I'm going to go kill Lamech because he's trying to be a ruler, and so I'm going to eliminate him. Lamech couldn't see well. He had a hard time seeing, so he had a boy, a servant with him, to tell him where to direct his arrow at. Lamech got the ambush and killed Cain, and then, of course, they blamed the boy because the boy told him where to point it and do it. Lamech couldn't do it himself. Then Lamech killed the boy, get rid of your witnesses and everything else, and then basically he told his wives about this, what he had done, and then his wives spilled the beans and on him, basically. So this was a sacrificial killing. Cain came to wound or hurt Lamech. Maybe Cain was killed, or the boy helping Lamech. There is a little bit of confusion in the story of Lamech was trying to do hunting and ended up, the boy instructed him to kill Cain. Then there's the story of Cain was coming to kill Lamech. So there could be some misinterpretations of what's going on. This is not uncommon in any type of a crime situation where there's different perspectives or different stories or opinions that are told. But this is what's happening here. And so some people will believe that Lamech killed Cain. So we hear these stories of Bigfoot, of being Cain. Maybe it's Lamech that's Bigfoot instead of Cain, maybe. We don't know. There's kind of some weird stories in here. But that's what's going on is with this experience with Lamech, basically. Now we look at verse 25. This jumps to another scene, basically. If you think of it from a movie, another experience. And Adam knew his wife again. She bare a son, called his name Seth. For God, said he, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So now they're going to compare the chapters of the two lines. Basically, as we get into chapter 5, the obedient one and the not obedient one, there's a lot of similar names. Again, Satan makes a duplicate. He makes a false copy of truth. So that often happens. Verse 26, and to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. And then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. So more people started to pray, more righteousness started happening. Seth means the second one, or substitute. He would take the place of Abel in the line of authority. So that's where Seth is the substitute for Abel in this line of authority, basically. And also Bible Dictionary, Enos and prayer are in there as well. So those are good things to look at. So stay tuned for more as we get into Genesis chapter 5 as we move forward with this. There's so much here. Make sure you're following along also in the book of Moses and the book of Abraham as we're getting closer to the great prophet Enoch, which we learn a lot of in the book of Moses. And we'll talk more about him later. So please stay tuned, share this with your friends, encourage people to follow it, leave in your comments what you think about some of these stories and ideas, and hopefully we are helping you understand the Old Testament better. and what was going on at this time. If you have questions, feel free to put those in there, the comments, and we'll do our best to answer those as well, or see if other followers can answer those also. So thanks. We'll talk to you later.